Ladies and gentlemen, are you excited for the battle of the century? Disney and the Daily Wire are clashing and they're making competing Snow White movies? Yeah, it's a thing that is technically happening. On one side, we have Rachel Zegler playing Snow White. On the other side, we have Brett Cooper playing Snow White. That's what it's called. And in my humble opinion, I think that both of these movies are probably going to end up being either bad or middling. And, when I look at like the live action Disney remakes, I genuinely believe that the main reason why they don't even feel necessarily like bad, as much as they feel soulless to me, I don't think that the creatives behind these movies are like genuinely passionately and earnestly trying to make the best art that they can make. I feel like the best example of this is the Aladdin movie. It's directed by Guy Ritchie, and I could be wrong, but like something tells me that Guy Ritchie was probably not eager to make an Aladdin movie. And what probably happened here was Disney was like, hey, Guy, do you want money? We'll give you money if you direct us an Aladdin movie. They're not projects that are born out of a genuine creative passion. They are projects born out of Disney going, we want money. IP? Popular IP? Yes, we will make a movie out of that. And when we're talking about the Disney Snow White movie specifically, just the pre-production on its own is telling us that this movie is shaping up to be a bit of a disaster. So there were these set photos that leaked of what we assumed were like the 7 dwarves, but they're not dwarves, and what is going on here, and why, and how, and por qué? Now, if I'm being completely honest, when it comes to adaptations, I don't really care if you stray away from the source material. Like, I'm just not one of these people that's like, it needs to be the same exact thing again. I just want the same thing over and over again. Like, if you want to make changes, even drastic changes, I just don't really care. However, the reason as to why you would make that change was always like dubious, because it's like, does Disney think that it would be offensive to have dwarves in the movie? Even though there was one dwarf there? Do they weirdly think that it would be offensive to have a group of dwarves? Like, I think we were all just like genuinely confused of what the logic of Disney's progressivism would have even been. But in any case, people were mad and Disney actually listened, although not necessarily for the better, because when they showed off what the dwarves look like in the movie, it was, that's right, the dwarves are CGI Polar Express looking monstrosities. And I just can't help but be like, you guys know that you could have just casted dwarves, right? Like, literally nobody would have been offended. Like, even if the original Snow White movie had offensive dwarf stereotypes, I'm not saying that it did, I'm just saying, like, even if that was the case, you could have just adapted around it, and, like, there really is just no reason to not give 7 people with dwarfism work, is I guess what I'm getting at. And now we get into the Daily Wire Snow White movie and why I also just don't think that that movie is going to be any good. First of all, they cast Brett Cooper as Snow White. If you don't know, Brett Cooper is one of the Daily Wire political commentators. It's really funny because people claim that Disney only casted Rachel Zegler because she's Hispanic and she's like a DEI hire or whatever. But like, at least with Rachel Zegler, she is like a legitimately great actress and singer. Am I saying that it's impossible that they casted her because, she's Hispanic and they wanted to push their woke agenda? Yeah, obviously that's possible. But with Brett Cooper, yeah, I mean, they obviously casted her because she's their like conservative propagandist and they just want to promote one of their political commentators. I mean, like that's almost like for sure why. But no offense to Brett Cooper, but Rachel Zegler is legitimately a world-class singer. Brett Cooper is not. I don't think. Maybe I'm wrong, but based on the singing that we heard in the trailer, yeah, Rachel Zegler is way better than her.
Once upon a time,
They also made this show called Mr. Burcham, where they also cast a bunch of their political commentators in. And in their defense, I haven't actually watched this show, so maybe I would watch it and it would be like amazing and the best thing that I've ever seen in my entire life. But based on everything that I've seen from it, I've seen scenes from the show, I've seen the trailer, obviously. It looks like one of the worst things that humanity has ever created. It looks like the antithesis of funny. And so this is all just to point out that similarly to Disney, the Daily Wire's modus operandi doesn't seem to be earnestly creating art. It just seems to be creating art that's in opposition to like wokeness and the left, and specifically Disney. The Daily Wire doesn't even hide this fact. Like, they openly say that they are creating content for children, literally to make it anti-woke and to combat Disney's wokeness.
It's been just a little over 1 year since Disney, the most powerful entertainment company in the world, got caught saying the quiet part out loud. Namely, that they were using their brand, a brand parents had been trusting with their children for generations, to indoctrinate those children into the LGBTQIA cult.
It's just businesses with agendas creating art in order to further those agendas and not really caring much about the artistic process itself or giving their artists the artistic freedoms to actually make art that feels meaningful. And listen, at the end of the day, all the movies and video games and TV shows that we watch are the happy medium between art and commerce, right? But clearly, the live-action Disney remakes are not striking that happy balance, and the Daily Wire, based on the stuff that I've seen from them, also don't seem to be striking that happy balance. These are all just like soulless corporate products that really don't say anything of value. Now, the other really weird aspect to all of this is that the Daily Wire's commentators are still making content about Disney's Snow White movie, and it just feels like weird Russian propaganda where it's like, well, yeah, obviously you guys are going to hate on the Disney Snow White movie because you're like making a direct competitor to it.
The new Snow White is going to be a feminist hero who don't need no man. Maybe she's a butch lesbian chick. You don't know. Maybe that's what Snow White was always about. Maybe it was always about the rejection of the patriarchy, which is why the character who hates her is an evil stepmother. Maybe not. Maybe she's just an evil stepmother because she too was victimized by the patriarchy. And in reality, it was the evil king probably who did this. That's probably it.
What is Blood yapping about? In the context of that video, that is like Ben Shapiro trying to say that Rachel Zegler was saying these things, and it's just like this bizarre straw man that Ben Shapiro decided to build himself and knock down. Like, don't get me wrong, I think that there's plenty to criticize about what Rachel Zegler said. Like, she didn't necessarily outright say this, but she did kind of imply that the original Snow White movie is like kind of outdated because the princess is just looking for love and that she doesn't have any other aspirations.
Reality is that the cartoon was made 85 years ago, and therefore it's extremely dated when it comes to the ideas of women being in roles of power and what a woman is fit for in the world. And so when we came to reimagining the actual role of Snow White, it became about the fairest of them all, meaning who is the most just and who can become a fantastic leader. And the reality is, Snow White has to learn a lot of lessons about coming into her own power before she can come into power over a kingdom.
To be fair, I think that's like probably a valid criticism to have of the original Snow White movie, that Snow White kind of just feels like a retarded child that has like little to no agency over what's going on in the plot. But like, I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with a woman just wanting to find love or whatever. Like, I think that's fine, especially for like a little girl wanting to be a princess. But like, I also just want to point out that there also are some like weirdly outdated stuff, especially with the prince, that in the words of Rachel Zegler were a little weird. Like the prince having some W harassment where like Snow White is like running away from him and he's just like, no, I'm not going to take this L. I'm going to start singing at you. And it's just like, bro, what the fuck is this? Or at the end of the movie when the bitch is dead and he just like kisses her corpse. Like what is this? This is so this is so weird. Like what? Ew. Ew. Now listen, to be clear, I'm not saying that we need to cancel Snow White or that we shouldn't show our kids Snow White anymore. Like, it's fine. These are just like funny things to notice now in 2024. But like, I don't think that Rachel Zegler is completely wrong when she's saying that the movie is in a lot of ways outdated. And like, especially when you're remaking it in 2024, just for the sake of it being a more compelling film. Like, yeah, I would like to see Snow White and the Prince actually build a relationship with one another. Like, if you don't know, the Prince harasses Snow White at the beginning of the movie in the clip that I showed you first. They don't speak. They don't interact at all for the rest of the movie. Then the movie ends. Snow White is dead. He kisses her corpse. and that is all of their interaction in this in the movie. It's bizarre. Again, it's like in 1937. Who cares? Like, I'm not trying to like cancel the movie or anything, or I'm not trying to like take away from its legacy or whatever. But yeah, if you're remaking it, there are just obviously things that you can improve. We also have Matt Walsh being normal.
But in this modern version, Snow White breaks into the dwarf house. I mean, she does that in the original too. Breaking and entering is a theme in both, let's admit. But in this one, she breaks in and then forces the dwarves to clean for her. These dwarves who've been toiling away all day get to come home and get bossed around by the woman whose life they're helping to save and who they didn't invite into their house in the first place.
What do you mean they're cleaning for her? It's their house. And she's teaching them to clean. So that's already just like a bizarre way to look at the situation that we saw in the trailer for the remake, where we see, Snow White teaching the dwarves how to clean and whatever. But if you watch the original movie, he's saying that Snow White bossing the dwarves around is bad. There is literally a scene in the original movie where she's like, y'all better clean your hands or else you're not going to be able to eat dinner. And then, like children, emasculated children, the dwarves like gingerly walk out and like wash their hands in the bath that's outside because this is like medieval times or whatever, and it's disgusting, and all of these people probably smelled really bad. But like Matt Walsh is either just like talking completely out of his ass in this movie, or he's never seen it, or he's just straight up lying, because I just want to be crystal clear. Snow White is, according to Matt Walsh, a feminist woke girl boss in the original movie because she bosses the dwarves around. Like I know this gets said a lot, and sometimes it maybe doesn't really make sense, but at least in this instance, if Snow White came out today in 2024, Matt Walsh would be calling it woke. Matt Walsh would be calling it feminist propaganda. And to be completely honest, this is another situation where it actually does look like the remake is going to be improving upon the original, because in the original movie, when Snow White is cleaning the house, she's cleaning it with like a bunch of the animals that she's friends with, and they're all like cleaning the house. It actually makes way more sense for her to teach the dwarves how to clean the house, because a big part about Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is that Snow White teaches the Seven Dwarves how to live more civilized lives and how to, not live like degenerates. And so for Snow White to actually teach the dwarves how to clean, I mean, that actually just makes a lot of sense, right? Like, for example, if you were to just clean Asmongold's room, it wouldn't really do much because he's a filthy degenerate, and like all of this trash would just reappear because Asmongold is a literal goblin. But if somehow you were able to teach Asmongold how to clean and like teach him how to not make it miserable for him, then he might actually just maintain his home clean, forever. So anyways, those were just like a couple arguments from Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh that I thought were really stupid. But again, it's just really weird to me that the Daily Wire is just like commenting on the Disney Snow White movie as if they're just like normal YouTube commentary channels that aren't in direct competition with Disney, even if the Disney Snow White movie ends up being good. Like, we all know that there's no way in hell that Ben Shapiro would honestly review it and say that it was. Maybe I'm wrong, but, I'd be happy to be proven wrong about that. But as it stands right now, this just feels like Russian propaganda. It's like, it's like Pepsi making an ad saying that Coke is bad. It's like, oh, really? You don't think that Coke tastes good? Wow, what a shocker. But anyways, I thought that this whole Snow White situation was just interesting. Culture war stuff is fun to talk about, even if it is a little teeny tiny bit silly. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. That's what really matters. Who cares about what I have to say? Let me know what you think. I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.